I'm here today with our naturopath at AZAW, Dr. Ashley. So I wanted to go ahead and elaborate a little bit on my post yesterday about the health journey that I'm going through. So after the competition, I experienced a lot of GI issues. So like, bloating, constipation, just some discomfort. Very typical post-show, but obviously that can be indicative of more. So I came to Ashley, and she definitely recommended I get a series of panels done. First one being food sensitivity, second being micronutrient, and then third being hormones. So I want to do kind of this three-part series. The first test that I got back was my food sensitivities. So I wanted to bring her in just to tell you more about the food sensitivity test, what the importance of it is, why she recommended it to me, and then kind of what we found in the plan of action. So Ashley, tell me more about how this food sensitivity works and why it's so important.
So the first thing that I usually tell people is food sensitivities is very different than a food allergy. A food allergy is an IgE response that's usually pretty immediate. You're going to get the itching, the hives, all that kind of typical stuff that you would associate with an allergic reaction. What we're actually testing for here is something that causes a little bit more of like subtle symptoms, so people may not even know that they have food sensitivities and maybe walking around with them every day. So we're actually testing an immunoglobulin known as IgG. This is done through blood work. We have two different panels here, one that tests 96 foods and one that tests 184. So just depending on what your diet looks like, how in-depth you really want to get. If you eat a pretty diverse diet, I usually recommend going for the more foods, just because we want to make sure we catch everything. There's a lot of different reasons why a person might want to do food sensitivity testing. Our daily lives can really damage the gut, whether it's stress, pharmaceuticals, antibiotic use, all kinds of different things. And what can happen is it can damage the gut lining to where now our foods are kind of slipping more into our bloodstream, and our body is creating, antibodies to it. And what those antibodies do essentially is they cause inflammation in the body, and they can cause a host of different symptoms that can be anywhere from obvious GI stuff like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, some alternating of that. Sometimes even acid reflux can hugely be attributed to food sensitivities. Body aches and pains, fatigue, rashes, all kinds of things, acne, all those things can kind of clue you into the fact that there may be some kind of gut disturbance going on that we want to take a closer look at.
Perfect. So clearly my symptoms match definitely a lot of the stuff that the, food sensitivity test can, attribute to. So with that being said, she recommended it to me. We got it done, and as you can see, there is a lot of yellow on my page, so she highlighted all the ones that came up as markers. So I guess based on this, kind of tell, if you don't mind telling them what we found, and then I guess what the plan of action is going forward.
Yeah. So usually when I run these things, when somebody just lights up a panel like this where they're having, 10 or more food sensitivities show up, it's indicative of something called leaky gut, which is kind of what I described before, where the gut barrier has essentially been compromised. And now what I find a lot of times is a lot of the foods that we're eating tend to be the ones that you show up and reactivate to. And that's just because that's what's slipping into the bloodstream and you're creating, a reaction to. So typically the plan of action, once we have isolated the offenders, is to eliminate as many, if not all, completely from the diet for about 4 to 6 weeks. And that way, at the same time, we're also introducing a pretty intense gut healing protocol. There's a couple of different things that I might use from that, from like glutamine combinations to a particular peptide that's really strong and helpful for that, like BPC 157. And then once we've kind of cleared all of that out for a while, we've restored the gut barrier. Usually by then symptoms have pretty much subsided. Her bloating and everything like that would be, I'm expecting to be pretty much non-existent. And then we've created a really clean slate for ourselves. So after that period is over, what I'll have people do is reintroduce foods one at a time. And what's actually really interesting is that you can actually have responses to foods that you've eaten up to 3 days later. So I have somebody introduce one at a time, they'll eat it, and then they won't touch anything else new for a few days and observe how their body feels. And some of these sensitivities are really just temporary, or they're more just her body reacting to it than there is an actual sensitivity, like long-term going on there. So it doesn't mean that she's going to have to avoid these things forever. It just means that we've got to kind of clear up the diet a bit, restore the gut barrier, and then see what's left over afterwards.
Perfect. So for my specific protocol, I know you were talking about the peptide. So what is my specific protocol?
Yeah, so for her, because she had just so much going on, prepping for a show is really stressful. I expect there to be a pretty good amount of compromised level to the gut, and that really reflected here in the panel too, with her having so much. So we're having her avoid these, a large portion of it being dairy. That's super common. Other common offenders are eggs, gluten, all of that, which I think she showed up here as well. Nuts are also really common, so she's gonna, yeah, exactly. So she's gonna avoid those. We have her working with a nutritionist to kind of help make sure that she's getting, things that are good, but avoiding those things. I have her on 2 different things, both a peptide known as BPC 157, body protective compound, that is really healing to the gut and anti-inflammatory. I'm also going to be adding in a combination product with glutamine and N-acetyl NAG, which is really healing to the gut as well. And then we'll kind of come back in about 6 weeks from now. And if her symptoms haven't totally cleared up, but they're mostly cleared up, we'll wait till the picture is completely clear. So some people, it may take more than 4 to 6 weeks. It really just depends on how much actual gut damage and inflammation there is.
Perfect. So just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an insight. So the next time we meet, the next panel is the micronutrient test. We should be getting back really soon, and that's going to be a whole new story. So thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, thanks.